After all the frustration and despair Raptors fans, especially me, felt after losing our lottery pick for this upcoming NBA draft, there is now an opportunity for the team to reacquire essentially the same draft pick. So we're going to break down what that opportunity is, what the reports are saying, what the Toronto Raptors would have to give up in order to make this deal, and whether or not it makes sense for this team. But before we dive into that, folks, I want to thank you all. You guys have been crushing it, hitting that like button in recent vids. The experiments seem to have given a conclusion that it helps me out big time when you guys are hitting that like button. So if you guys are enjoying the daily Toronto Raptors coverage, make sure you guys spam that like button. I greatly appreciate it. But let's dive into what's currently going on, because after the Toronto Raptors lost their lottery pick, there have been a ton of debates in our comment section, on Reddit, Twitter, all over the place amongst Toronto Raptors fans about how this team should be moving forward. I'm probably of the camp that this team should try to compete, should try to do their best next season to see how the core of Scotty, RJ, Emmanuel quickly, with a well-rounded roster, can actually contend in the Eastern Conference. Are we good enough? Are our young players going to take that leap? See how things play out, try to build up that winning culture and then go from there. But there's also a legitimate and reasonable argument to be made and say, hey, let's deal away Jakob Poeltl. We know how bad this team is without a center. We're still a young group, and try to make our shot. Shoot our shot for Cooper Flagg and all the more interesting prospects in the NBA draft for next season, and essentially tank next year, one more year of a high draft pick, and then see how things play out from that point. Completely reasonable arguments on both sides. And no matter what camp you fall in, everyone is probably along the same lines of belief. We need to bring in as much young talent as possible, develop them, and try to build out a team that makes sense and is complete for the future. And obviously having a lottery pick, no matter what people are saying about this year's NBA draft, would have helped that for the Toronto Raptors team this year. Obviously, if we kept our draft pick this year, it would have affected 2025, but there's an opportunity to get back into the opportunity, the sweepstakes of this year's NBA lottery, as news has come out that the Memphis Grizzlies are planning to shop the number 9 overall pick in trade talks for a win-now player. The Memphis Grizzlies internally expect to compete near atop the Western Conference for next season after dealing with countless injuries. And this is coming from Zach Lowe. So this is very, very intriguing, because obviously the Memphis Grizzlies are a team that were atop the Western Conference just a couple seasons ago, but suspensions, injuries to Ja Morant, Marcus Smart being in and out of the lineup, JJJ being in and out of the lineup. This team dealt with a lot of turmoil last season and are looking to get back into the mix to where they were a couple seasons ago. Want win now guys, want win now pieces that the Toronto Raptors could certainly offer up to Memphis, because they're a team that's looking for gritty defenders. That's the way Memphis has played for years at this point, and they lost Dillon Brooks, which I think, again, the memes aside, the poking the bear of LeBron James aside, they felt the impacts of losing him this previous year, and the Raptors have a couple of players to potentially, make Memphis intrigued if a deal was offered out there on the table. So the first guy might be a little bit of a pipe dream for the number 9 overall selection. You saw him in the thumbnail, but Bruce Brown is a guy that I can't think of slot in perfectly with this Memphis Grizzlies team. Obviously, they have Ja Morant, they have JJJ, Marcus Smart, and Desmond Bane as their core 4 players, but this team, again, needs versatile defenders, guys that can cut, can play off the wing and stuff, are still solid shooters. I mean, Bruce Brown would come in, especially if he's healthy, and elevate that defense, do what he did to the for the Denver Nuggets out there in the Western Conference as well, and he's an expiring contract. The Memphis Grizzlies attach maybe a Brandon Clark, who is on a longer-term deal, Canadian, dealt with some injuries, might not be the most valuable player here now. The Raptors would be buying low, right? The Grizzlies would be getting off of that money. Could be an interesting sort of sales pitch to the Memphis Grizzlies, because Bruce Brown, for as much as he's getting trashed on by Raptors fans, is still a solid player. Average 11, 4, and 3 last season, 27 years old, fits that sort of timeline of the Memphis Grizzlies. Has previously won a championship. Again, the three-point shooting isn't that elite, but maybe Masai Ujiri can get crafty, can get his salesmanship up, take back some bad contracts, and acquire that number 9 overall pick for Bruce Brown. Again, with how everyone's talking, everyone's out here yelling that this draft class is so bad at the top of their lungs, saying that there's no good players in it, it's all risky pieces and all that stuff. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Now, realistically, Bruce Brown, the way he played at the end of the previous season, I just don't think there's going to be a huge market for him. So, again, I made my sales pitch. I made my opened up the video with it. Hopefully Grizzlies GMs are seeing that and saying, "Hey, let's buy in on Bruce Brown." But realistically, the more optimal realistic path for this team is trading Jakob Poeltl to the Memphis Grizzlies. This team on the Grizzlies team, especially with Steven Adams now probably out of the picture for the future, they need a sort of bona fide center that can defend, take the load off of JJJ, so he can be more of like that help side shot blocking defender rather than banging down low night in, night out, especially with how much he fouls out there on the defensive end, and obviously dealt with some injuries as well. So having a center that can sort of brood it down low for this Grizzlies squad, Jakob Poeltl will be a very intriguing prospect for this team. And obviously JJJ is a stretch 4, so, there isn't as much spacing issues as there might be with this Raptors group or other teams in the NBA. Poeltl is a guy that just sort of gets slotted in as a winner, and then this lack of free throw shooting can be mitigated because that is really impactful at the end of games where JJJ can be a small ball 5 to close things out, whereas Poeltl can take the hits, take the defensive brunt over the course of the season. Poeltl will be a very intriguing piece for this Memphis Grizzlies squad, and I genuinely think, again, similar package, more realistically, right? The Raptors taking back Kennard and Brandon Clark, right? That type of money, again, not negative assets, but longer-term deals, especially if they want some more win-now guys. I think that's a realistic trade that could go down for this Raptors group because Poeltl obviously is a dude that is only 28 years old himself, will be 29 next season, so not old or washed by any means, in the prime of his career, certainly a win-now guy, average 11, 8, and 3, a solid facilitator. Again, the shooting, the free throw shooting is his sort of Achilles heel, but, they need like a positional, gritty 5. Because JJJ is going to be blocking the shots, going to be mobile, going to be switchable, all those types of things. And then Poeltl can be that sort of bruiser down low that takes the hits, takes the beatings, and catches a ball in the dunker spot as a nice touch around the basket and have an impact for that team. So, does this make sense for the Memphis Grizzlies? In my opinion, it certainly does. He's kind of exactly the win now type of positional piece that they'd be interested in. And given the sort of how much this draft class is being bashed on, I think that's realistically what you're going to get for Jakob Poeltl. He was the 9th pick a bunch of seasons ago, and now you're essentially trading that in for a guy that's more polished, more win now, under a contract for this Toronto Raptors team right now at this point for the next couple seasons, so you have control over him. The Grizzlies and Raptors have had a ton of previous trade experience as well. It just seems like a trade that could potentially go down if Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster are interested, and that's where the discussion really comes into play. Does this make sense for the Toronto Raptors? Well, yes, it depends. It completely depends on whether or not the Toronto Raptors see value at that number 9 selection, which is essentially the same pick that we gave up the San Antonio Spurs deal for, right? Do the scouts value probably a center or a forward, in that sort of range that may not be as obviously impactful as Jakob Poeltl right now, but 2-3 years down the line has that potential upside to really be paying dividends around the Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley timeline, and still slide in, have an impact on this team right now, right, and sort of move forward with a roster that makes sense and can be built and developed, around this current core group's timeline. And that's really where the decision has to be made. I've never pretended to be some draft expert, so that's not the case with Masai Ujiri, but if this team does want to sort of get back into the lottery and essentially reverse the trade they made for Jakob Poeltl a couple seasons ago, this is essentially the way to do it. They now have that opportunity opened up for them, and I imagine the Memphis Grizzlies would jump at the chance to get a Jakob Poeltl, if a deal went down. Maybe you'll call me delusional. I think definitely the Bruce Brown one is probably a bit more delusional, but certainly I think they would go for a deal with Jakob Poeltl at this point. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. You guys are the best to make it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Hit that like button, actually. Subscribe too, but hit the like button. Yeah, I'm signing out. Cheers.